Hola, Filterinos. Before we get to the episode, we wanted to take a moment to address the June 24th, 2022 Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. As you know, this decision stripped away the right to have a safe and legal abortion. We believe everyone should have the freedom to decide what's best for themselves and their families, including when it comes to ending a pregnancy. This decision has dire consequences for individual health and safety and could have harsh repercussions for other landmark decisions. Restricting access to comprehensive reproductive care, including abortion, threatens the health and independence of all Americans. Learn more by visiting podvoices.help. If you're able to support others, please consider donating to abortion funds. We're going to have a bunch of links in our show notes. Everybody here at Pop Filter encourages you to speak up, take care, and spread the word. Now on to the show.
Hello, and welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast on the internet that has the science and the screaming to determine what is the single greatest movie of any given year. This season, we are getting our asses all the way through 1982. And tonight, the film is Poltergeist. The show will work as it always does. It is a game show. I will invite two panelists / gladiators into the middle of the ring, and they will duke it out through the use of movie knowledge, movie theory, and compliments towards the host to determine who is the winner. But, special wrinkle for tonight, the board at Pop Filter has said that we are doing very, very bad when it comes to the younger demographic.
No.
And I have tonight our first co-host. When I introduce this person, please understand that this is not like a comedy bang bang improv bit. This is an actual 16-year-old child who is going to co-host on the show. He's my nephew, and much like everybody's nephew, his name is Aiden. Aiden, how are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. How are y'all doing tonight?
Okay, don't just talk to me. Don't.
All right.
Nobody's been introduced yet.
All right.
Aiden, tonight we're doing Poltergeist. Did you watch that movie?
I did. I had to watch it in two parts.
Was it too scary?
It terrified me.
It terrified you.
Mainly the clown part.
There was a clown, and that clown was scary. Did you like it? It did come out. The movie came out 30 years before you were born.
Yeah.
Was it scary?
Not nearly as scary. I feel like I could have started my brother on it.
How old is your brother?
9 years old.
Okay, I feel like that's damning with faint praise. What is the classic horror? Like, what's the scariest movie you've ever seen? And you are on a podcast right now. This is being recorded. Like, if you're just going to sit there and think, you are ruining the show for the audience.
I'm wasting time.
You're wasting time.
Man, I'd say a suburban film.
What is it? Are you a Serbian film?
Yeah, that one.
You have seen a Serbian film?
Yes.
Holy shit! Who are your parents?
Amen.
Now, Aiden, we agreed this was going to be the last time you talked tonight, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But as a special wrinkle for tonight, there's been a lot of complaints so far about the scoring system in this 1982 season. So, what we're going to do is I'm going to turn off your mic. So you can't talk again, right?
Right.
No, I just said you can't talk again.
All right.
God damn it.
Classic.
But we are going to let you do all the scoring. Now, do you know what you're scoring? Like, how does somebody get a point?
You have to be funny.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah.
Okay, what else?
You have to make Ryan laugh.
Okay.
And
That's 2 for funny.
Which is different than being funny.
I was just filled in on this like 30 minutes ago. So
Sounds like you know how the show works. Why don't you tell us?
I think one of them is not throw the how we do the show under the bus, but keep going.
and you press Mike, I'm fat.
Oh, yeah, there is the mic I'm fat button.
I'm fat, so I burp and fart.
That one seems to be working.
There's a lot of
Mouths
buttons
of
here,
babes.
Aiden, that I'm going to trust you with. Don't touch them too liberally. What you want to do is you want to look up here at the Greg and Mike buttons, okay?
All right.
If those are our two contestants, we don't even know. Our first contestant is Greg. Greg, how are you doing tonight?
I am a gladiator, Ryan, because I'm glad to be here.
So, Aiden, you can just hit that button if you want to. You don't have to.
Yeah!
I wanted to.
Okay. Thank you, System of a Down. Also, here is Mike. Mike, you don't have a nephew named Aiden, right?
I do not.
Now, Greg, you do.
Oh yeah.
So, Aiden, I don't know if that's a point for Mike or a point for Greg, because Greg has a nephew named Aiden.
Greg. Yeah.
My nephew named Aiden is also very cool. So clearly,
Long hair and everything.
oh yeah, very long
Really?
hair.
Yeah,
There you go,
You got to be
All
an
right.
Aiden with long hair.
This is shenanigans.
So, Mike, we'll get to you first, because everyone, mostly the Greg heads, but everyone is awaiting the fact that Greg watched a horror movie.
Yep.
What do you think of Poltergeist?
Well, I'm happy to win because I assume Greg watched it with his fingers mostly covering his eyes, blocking out anything worth talking about.
There should be a Greg screen where you can buy it, put it on your TV, and it's just giant fingers that's on your TV screen.
No,
Aiden, you also
I
have a
loved,
Ryan button right here. Just hit that. There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
I loved this movie as a kid and haven't seen it since. I probably was the other nephew's age when I first saw it. I watched a lot of stuff too young. Not a Serbian film at 16 because fuck. But
I mean, it could have been like a comedy, right? That's just a nation of origin.
yeah, an American film, a Brazilian film.
The
a
internet
You
gives you
saw
bad
a
ideas.
Serbian film? Messed up.
Internet gives you bad ideas. I'll tell you that.
But it did. I remember it being much scarier than now in my advanced age. But I still thoroughly enjoyed it. And like, I don't know if I go to horror movies to be scared because I'm an adult, and so I go, "Oh, the images that somebody invented. Oh no!" But yeah, I loved it. I still loved it, and it's what you remember and what you don't remember, and how it all plays out. Because by the end, I was like, wasn't the clown thing like the scariest part of this movie? And everybody's happy, and I was like, movie, you got me, you son of a bitch.
You know what? The movie pulled one over on me because the scariest part of this movie is actually Poltergeist 2. It's that thin guy with the hat that comes knocking on the door.
Yeah, he's not in this one.
The most iconic part of this movie is not in this movie. Yeah, we'll get into the horror aspects versus the filmmaking quality, and what it even means to be a good horror movie, because it's, all three of us vote on the bracket, so it's rare that we get a classic horror movie to be here. Greg, how'd it go?
Yes. Well, this is an interesting movie. I feel like it would have really scared me when I was younger. Like, it definitely would have scared me if I saw this when I was a kid. But I found it slightly less scary than I expected. And I was like, okay, that wasn't so bad. But there was still 20 minutes left in the movie. And it goes pretty hard in the last 20 minutes. Like,
That lady said this house is clean.
she said it was clean. Like, your one job is to come in and be like, okay, there's a poltergeist. Okay, now the poltergeist is gone. Lady, it's not clean. Like, there's obviously still something here. And so the way in which the movie earns that last little bit, that got me. But overall, it wasn't as dreadful an experience as I thought it was going to be. A lot of the effects are kind of cool. Like, it's scary, but it's also kind of like, look at that guy, though. That's
Right.
actually pretty cool. So I know, like, and so it was not as bad as I thought it might be. But I do have to admit, at the same time, there's a way you can watch a horror movie where you kind of, I didn't literally put my hands in front of my eyes, but I watched it during the day. I watched it, with the volume not turned all the way up to 40, so there's ways in which I kept it from being as scary as it could have been, I guess.
Well, we're going to get to all this. We're going to talk about how scary it was, its legacy as a horror movie, and really, like, is this the most 1982 movie of all time? Like, does this prove that the legacy of horror is not to keep scaring, but to show you exactly what the time was like, But we're going to do that after a break. It's impossible to talk about the film Poltergeist without also discussing all of the legends around it. The movie itself has a pretty simple premise. Family tries to escape a haunted house. But the stories that surround the film have become bigger than the film itself. First, there's the legendary Poltergeist curse. Multiple onset injuries. 2 of the Freeling children died. One of them, Dominic Dunn, was murdered. One of the construction workers was murdered. In fact, Zelda Rubinstein, who played Tangina, died 28 years after the movie came out of natural causes. The other controversy that surrounds the movie is who made this shit. Steven Spielberg co-wrote the script, based on his own story / childhood. Surprise, surprise. But he was also prepping E.T., and his contract stipulated he couldn't direct anything once pre-production on E.T. had started. Enter Tobe Hooper, the director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Stories from the set vary, with some people saying that despite Spielberg wandering the set every day and being an all-around Butinsky, Tobe Hooper directed the movie. Others say, based on his control of the production, that Spielberg should be given co-director credit, if not sole directing credit. Taste buds, we are not here to research who directed what, nor are we here to determine what we think based on watching the movie. So instead, I ask you this. Can you feel a blend of styles here between Hooper and Spielberg? And does that blend elevate the movie or muddle it?
I think elevate, because the family aspect is so totally Spielberg, right? It feels like maybe he didn't have full control because there's actually a dad here. So that's how you know it's not just a Spielberg directed movie. But it's so focused on the family dynamics and how they interact. And that makes the horror more powerful. Now there's characters we care about. And then Toby brings in the like legit horror pedigree and sets up shots that are more than like some horror movies can just be like sitcom style, like set up the camera, something will pop out, who cares? There's pretty few jump scares in this movie, and instead he always leans it's creepy, spooky, and maybe a little oogie.
It seems like sometimes they are working against each other when instead of a conventional scare, it feels like the movie goes for big, bombastic special effect. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes that stood in the way of some of the horror. And in fact, a movie that might have like pointed out that this might happen would be Jaws, because with Jaws is so scary because you see so little of the bad guy. But in this, like
the mayor,
Robert, there will be like an obvious point for a scare, and then what comes out is like a huge skeleton head, and you're just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, there's a way in which how epic and cool and metal that is actually keeps it from being scary, because you're just like, well, that's pretty gnarly, actually.
So the less it looks like it was funded or sponsored by Spirit Halloween Store, the better.
Yes. And the more it's like a rotting moving steak or someone peeling their own skin off, you're like, oh, fuck that. But
I think that one thing the movie forgoes is that sense of slowly building dread that a lot of horror movies have, and instead it goes to the big visuals early. And in part, I think that's kind of a little bit of a con, because I think that all of it is setting you up for the last 20 minutes. But at the same time, there are moments where most movies would have been very scary, and instead what you get is like, it feels like a little bit of a Indiana Jones movie for a moment or something, almost like a high adventure.
I mean, like that face thing that Mike brought up, that's not Hooper sneaking that in. Like, that is Spielberg's hand. Spielberg is wearing the mask and pulling that off of himself. So Spielberg was like fully on board of this. Right. If you think that like Hooper's B movie status is bringing in that thing, a very realistic looking face that was pulled off, that's not true. Like they're both working towards this. I want this feeling.
What the Tobe Hooper name seems to do, and the co-directing, who I really do not care, but it's now it feels like Spielberg doesn't have to worry about. And it's crazy because he started with Jaws, which is not that family friendly, but he immediately went, it's all for the kids. And so having this other guy direct it makes him be like, well, now I can get away with the sick shit that they won't let me put in fucking E.T. or Hook.
And to me, just personal, I think that the face pales in comparison to the steak. The steak is something that Spielberg would never, ever have. In fact, he said, this is taking too long, I want it cut out. But I believe that Spielberg was like, I'm too sicky in my tum-tum, and I want this cut out. But that was gross. And then just the whole idea of like, now you're seeing maggots.
Yeah. And now, did you eat a maggot because you had that chicken wing? Also, who tries to, hey, I need a midnight snack. Oh, this family has a steak? I guess I'll start cooking that in the middle of the night. You deserve everything you have coming to you.
But first of all, he does do the official thing of opening a fridge, which is you put a chicken leg directly in your mouth. No matter what, if you open a fridge.
Just a loose wing.
Well, he slaps the steak just down on the counter.
Yeah.
It's like this weird red steak. It looks like a dog's toy, and he just slaps it down on the counter.
He knows it's clean.
You can hit.
He was told his house is clean.
Don't don't wait for a pause because there will never be one. They will never shut up. You can just hit
We'll
these
never
buttons
shut
right
up.
when they're talking.
No, he just has a very high standard.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't like any of the stuff.
One
we've been
thing
saying.
one thing I want to circle back on is who is the bigger documenter of the American family? Is it Spielberg or is it Toby Hooper with his Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Aren't they both
Documentary.
like talking about families on just different levels?
Well, I think that's a really good question, and that's a really good question, Greg.
Thank you, Ryan.
It's a really good question, Greg. Nope. Okay.
Greg.
I think that's really what you have to look at is who's what is the important thing that comes through in this movie, and who is that accountable to? Because I think that Hooper's ideas about America and families are here as much as Spielberg's, but it's also the structure of it as well. I don't think that Jaws is not a traditional horror movie. Jaws is an elevated horror movie because it's not endless set pieces. And I think that Hooper really, and I'm not blaming Hooper. I don't think he's a lesser director than Spielberg. I do think he's a lesser director than Spielberg.
Right.
But,
It's okay to say.
I mean, you're allowed to say that about every other Spielberg. No, wait, every other director. I forgot the name.
so
of
you just
what the
call
thing is.
directors Spielberg.
Directors. Who Spielberged this one?
Did you get a Spielberg
Ron
for your
Howard.
movie yet? But yeah, forgoing story because we can just have elevating set scenes. I think does do a lot for this movie, and then we have to find the little details to put together the story. I think that helps it out and maybe muddles it a little bit. I don't know. Let's talk about the structure. Did the structure work for you guys, or was it just let's get to the next part, let's get to the next part?
It worked for me because it doesn't feel like a traditional horror movie. Everything, even if the big Spirit Halloween thing wasn't scary, everything was always surprising.
Yeah,
And
totally.
there was a surprising tone throughout it. When things start getting scary, the mom's first reaction, she's like, and then she's like, wait, this is the most fun thing
This is
that's ever
pretty
happened
cool,
to our family?
actually.
Hold
and
on, we
that-
have to be safe. Let's get a football helmet and let's do some shit.
This invisible force is pulling our darter. Watch.
And also, and then it's so interesting to have it be like they lose the little girl, and then they have to kind of go on with their lives a little bit, but they can't leave the house, but they can't totally move on, but they're still hoping to save her. And that view of living with this really abnormal condition for days and days and days, rather than it's just a couple of spooky nights. It's it enters into their just day-to-day livelihoods. That guy leaves and goes to work sometimes. Not always, but sometimes he goes into the office while his daughter's in a parallel dimension.
Dude, there's a part where the boss comes over and Craig T. Nelson, or as I call him, Coach, is huge bags under his eyes, untucked shirt. Looks like
He looks
he's been
like
on
Jack Skellington.
It looks like he's been on a 12-day bender, and his boss comes over and he's like, "Hey, man, everything okay?" No,
Obviously
dude.
not, dude. This guy's like Beetlejuice right now.
Also, screw this guy's boss because Coach is like, oh, yeah, I have a bug. They all have the bug.
Yeah,
we're
we
all pretty
got a
sick.
bug.
And he's like, oh, cool. Hop in the car. We don't want to lose you. And he's like, what? I want to give you a brand new house, Mr. Flu. And he's just like, look at me. I'm obviously not doing well.
Yeah,
that's one of
physically
the-
or otherwise.
That's one of the ways in which this movie is very effectively creepy, though, because there's no indication of why the boss is so weird, but that
Yeah.
guy's deeply freaky. Every look on his face, everything that he says is as horrible as some of the things you see inside that haunted house. He's clearly stricken somehow by what's going on.
He a third movie for that guy, third movie of the year movie for that actor, James.
Really?
Yeah, because he's one of the stars of Return of the Living Dead, which Tompkins and I did for the '85 horror season.
Oh, he was the one of the doctors, right?
Yeah.
The mortician.
Yeah, he was the guy who worked in the taking care of dead pets or whatever. Classic actor. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll do a Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore.
You know what the music means? It's time for Rushmore. Aiden. Can't just look at me. You got to talk into the mic.
Yes.
Do you know what Rushmore is?
Not a clue. I'm gonna
You
be
don't know
honest.
Mount Rushmore.
Oh, Mount Rushmore. I thought you were talking about a movie. Yes, I know what Mount Rushmore is.
Well, Rushmore is a very good movie.
Oh, is it?
Yes, that you should watch. But what is Mount Rushmore?
Mount Rushmore is the tallest mountain on planet Earth. I think so.
I think that's a better explanation than what we did.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard that.
It's a mountain with the 4 heads of presidents carved into it.
That's Everest. I'm thinking of Everest. Okay.
It's a 4-headed monster mountain. That's okay, dude. Nobody knows mountains. This is not a show about mountains. We're going to do a different mountain dedicated to 1982, and it's the Scandals. Mike, I need this every time, especially now because I'm the host. What does this word mean?
I've learned that even though it does count as a scandal, don't do a thing where it's a bunch of kids end up
Children
dead.
die. Yes, that's not
But
going to get you points.
I'd say any sort of industrial malfeasance to celebrity shocking events to political ne'er-do-well action.
Yeah, so, like, is it tabloid fodder? Is that the definition?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bat boy strikes again.
Usually
Scandal.
But I think what we always come across is that it is the line gets blurred. Ideally, it's like a truck upends on the highway and spills flubber everywhere. That's fun. But then also counting as a good scandal would be like somebody gets pregnant with like...
Some of that flubber goes and knocks up a girl. That's a scandal.
And you would think there'd be a ton of those for every year, but I don't know. Mostly it's just really bad things that happen that year.
I, of course, because I'm hosting, I have my favorite one. So if you get this right, you get 3 points. Otherwise, if you get on the mountain, you get 1 point. Who won the last one?
The last Rushmore, the last show.
The last show.
Greg, I think.
Me, baby. Me.
That means, Mike, you go first. And my God, has there never been a more obvious one in the history of Mount Rushmore? Go ahead. Does that mess you
Yeah,
up?
dude.
It really got in my head. Let's start off with my little friend, Ozzy Osbourne. That old shuffling man who likes to go, Sharon! Somebody threw a bat. He thought it was rubber. Bit into the rubber bat on stage.
Mike.
It was not rubber, and he bit the head off of a live bat.
Mike.
That is it right away. Not the obvious one. But my God, do I love this one because I remember as a kid in the early 2000s when I was like 1 or 2 years old, people still being scared of Ozzy Osbourne
Yeah.
because he did this thing. That
Especially
you
He
can't
did it on
actually
purpose.
do-
He planned for it.
That's so crazy. All right, Mike, good start. Ozzy Osbourne is on the mountain. Greg, what's the obvious one? Or you can do whatever you want.
Okay, for me, the most obvious one is the 1982 invasion of the Falkland Islands. What a terrible, terrible... You guys, Argentina went to war with England in 1982.
That sounds some like
They went-
fake history
They
stuff.
had a territorial dispute that led to a shooting war between England and Argentina. What a stupid, pointless war. Margaret Thatcher's son was missing at the time. Some speculate that her head was in 2 different places. But it was a shameful military action and certainly a large scandal in my book.
That feels like it's important and therefore is on the maybe pile. Mike, you're up.
I'll do another one. I don't know if you guys know
it's
this guy,
your turn.
Ozzy
Like, you have to.
Osbourne. He was arrested in Texas because he urinated on the Alamo.
Okay. I don't know how many Aussies we can do tonight.
Should I move away from my
Yeah.
Aussie ones? Because I have a few more. of
I mean,
those.
it's Greg's turn, but yeah, that should be your last Aussie one.
All right, check it out. We're talking about a cursed filming for Poltergeist. How about another cursed filming in 1982, Twilight Zone, the movie?
Oh,
There
shit.
was a big helicopter accident, and it's probably John Landis's fault. He probably had them fly the helicopter too low, and then basically he hit the detonation too early for like the prop explosion, and he shot this helicopter out of the air, and actor Vic Morrow died, and 2 child actors died.
Father of, do you remember?
Scandalous.
Vic Morrow? Do you remember who his daughter is?
Tom Morrow, the host of Interventions at Disneyland.
No, it's actually Jennifer Jason Leigh, star of Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
That's right.
Yeah, so Twilight Zone is on. That's crazy. John Landis continued to work and made okay movies. I was a big fan as a kid, despite being a clearly terrible person to be around, who also created terrible children as well.
Yeah, he begat
So,
an even worse human.
Yeah, Landis begats Landis. So that is a point for Greg. Mike,
Yeah.
what Aussie-less scandal will you present to us now?
All right. Somebody British, the singer of a metal band, did this thing. Here's a fun one, actually, is around the Chicagoland area, people started dying mysteriously, and nobody knew what it was. And then they're like, wait, they all bought Tylenol recently and took the Tylenol, and some of the people found their dead relative, and they're like, oh, this is giving me a headache seeing my dead mom. I'll take some Tylenol, and then they died.
Oh, my God.
Someone was slipping cyanide into the Tylenol gel caplets and hiding them, and to this day, they still do not know who did it, because the
Holy
guy who
shit.
said he did do it like 20 years later, they figured out he was in New York and not anywhere near Chicago. So the Tylenol and cyanide scandal of Chicago, 1982.
Is this Tylenol more like Dylenol?
Yeah.
This is
That's the
this
name
is
of the
like the
scandal.
classic 80s story, because there would be the most anecdotal evidence of all time, and then companies would be ruined.
Yeah.
Like, people would freak out so much.
But Tylenol wasn't ruined because they got the Johnson & Johnson company, who owns them because they own everything, got out in front of it and went, hey, we agree that this is fucked up and we're really looking into it, instead of most companies try to be like, no, we don't think that's what's happening.
Also,
Could have got that cyanide anywhere.
I got to give it up to a company who's like, one Johnson. We can't just be the Johnsons.
Not enough.
Is it two different Johnson families, do you think?
Yes, they came together.
And weren't the Johnsons, but Johnson and Johnson. Aiden, what do you think? Dylenol as a scandal. Do you think that's a big deal?
Yeah, I'd say so.
All right, Mike gets the point.
Yes.
Mike.
Damn it.
Greg, what do you got?
The first ever computer virus was designed in 1982, written by Rich Skrenta, and it infected Apple II computers. And I think computer viruses have made all our lives so miserable. Why am I always downloading the attachments?
Next
Why,
time you
oh,
say
why?
Next time you say somebody who created a virus, his first name is Wretch, don't correct yourself.
Just keep
leave
going.
that. Yeah, Wretch.
Rich Krendel.
All right, that's a maybe. We're on the speed round. Mike, go.
The musical Cats began its 18-year run on Broadway in 1982.
Ooh, that is gross. Greg?
The play in college football. They play where they're running back the kickoff and they run through the band. And the band is on the field. And they're seriously weaving around the band. Yeah, it was a Stanford. I can't remember who they were playing. Oh, Berkeley versus Stanford, the big rivalry.
Mike, you got any more?
Oh, I have a few more. Joel Strummer disappeared for weeks. They had a canceled tour. Nobody in the Clash knew where he was, and he was just hanging out with his wife in Paris.
Was he a guitar player?
Yes?
And his name was Joe Strummer?
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Greg, what do you got?
The United Freedom Front bombed an office in South Africa. They were dedicated not to nonviolence, but just to terrorism against places that didn't have any like workers in them. Interesting.
Aiden, hit the mic button.
Mike.
Your scandals of 1982 are Ozzy Osbourne eating the head off of a bat, John Landis and his Twilight Zone filmmaking, Tylenol, more like Dylenol, and the play Cats began. We just can't get around it, folks. That's your scandals of 1982. When we come back, more about Poltergeist.
Well, that is very, very funny. Or very sad. And perhaps now you have something to think about. Or very problematic, and perhaps we have something to think about. But in any event, I'm sure you have some reaction to what you're listening to. So why not check us out on the social media? You can go to Instagram or Twitter and find us at YourPopFilter. Email contacts@YourPopFilter. Hey, everybody. Keep watching them movies.
Ultimately, gentlemen, I think that we settled the director thing. We can move on to the horror of it all. What is haunting this family? The legacy of American brutality, crass consumerism, the dissolution of the American family, cowboy ghosts. And I want to start here, and I think that this is the thing that both directors have a say on. And I want to hear what you guys got out of this, is suburbanites and suburbia. What is scary about that?
I think it's it feels like the movie is saying, and the director's just saying, kind of like there's no conscious consumption under capitalism. It feels like there's no good suburbanite. Even the good ones, you're sitting on top of a cemetery. Like, people had to die for this giant swath of land so you can get your McMansion.
Mike.
Yeah, that ultimately what we have now is papering over like a proud legacy, a proud country, and that now we're replacing all that with disposable, unnecessary, disconnected just sort of like a papering over, right? Like literally the idea that these houses were not dug into the ground at all and somehow are just right on top of cemeteries. What about the piping? What about the underground wiring? Like, what about the foundations of the house? All that doesn't matter because what the idea is that it's on the surface, right? That's where they live, is literally most on the surface. And that's the only...
Is that the problem with Coach, is that the American dream was pulled back? Like, in order for the American dream to keep going, you have to have blinders on. And you can't understand how awful all of the stuff that came before you to get you to the spot was.
And his got ripped away. One of the best scenes is we talked about when he has the my daughter got kidnapped by ghost flu, and his boss makes him go anyway. And they're up on the hill, and he's like, "We're gonna build your house right here, and it's gonna be even bigger. And look at the view." He's like, "Oh, won't that ruin the view down there?" He's like, "It doesn't matter. You won't be down there anymore."
Right.
And then he's like,
He just get in
And
my
then he
car.
said Parasite 2019.
Get in my car and let me explain capitalism to you, my boy, my dude.
And then he's like, "What about the cemetery?" And he's like, "Oh, we'll move it. We've done it before." And that that's the
Coach automatically assumes, oh, it won't be just the headstones. That would be disgusting.
I would expect not a not mentioned scandal is somebody stole the singer of Leonard Skinner's headstone, and that's basically what this movie is about. It's
They
just
stole
stealing-
Leonard Skinner's?
based on Leonard Skinner's.
Were either of you surprised to find out it was like specifically not a Native American
I
burial
really felt
ground?
like
Yeah.
I remembered it being a Native American burial
Same here.
ground.
My wife and I had this moment. We were like, "This is a Mandela effect for sure." I was
think
like
it might
so
be
ready
Pet
for them.
Cemetery.
Yeah, I guess that's the conclusion we came to, that we're remembering Pet Cemetery, because I was like, was it The Shining? And she's like, no. And I was like, some movie, this is the premise of it. But this one goes out of its way to be like, actually, it's not that type of cemetery. And so then
We're ready to declare America's messed up, but we're not saying they did anything historically
is that
wrong to
just
the
pulling
indigenous
punches?
people.
well, that's what I wonder. Like, I feel like ultimately this movie tries to both benefit from, but then it might be potentially hampered by not exactly identifying what the bad guy is, both in a literal and a metaphorical sense. Like, literally, we don't quite know what this evil force that besets them is. Is it just ghost cowboys? But it seems to be something in addition to that. It seems like there's something inside that phenomenon, like
There
a
is.
presence. Yeah.
So
And
that's
then,
in the sequels. They start to peel into that.
That would be awesome, though, if it's like, wait, is this a Native American burial ground? It's like, no, worse, scarier, cowboy burial ground.
well, wouldn't it be though? I mean, like, no, we're the ones that like wiped people off the face of the
Oh
earth.
yeah, these
right?
are the
Like,
murder sons of bitches
yeah,
that
these
we're
are
on top of.
that did all the clearing out and everything. But I think that ultimately it is maybe a point against the movie, because the movie could do a better job of being like, here is exactly what we're critiquing. It feels like
Right.
sometimes they're kind of critiquing capitalism. Sometimes they're kind of critiquing the breakdown of the modern family. A lot of times they're critiquing suburbanism and these different offshoots of it. But it feels like ultimately it doesn't just point the finger, like the same way that The Shining like sort of points the finger at like alcohol as like what is the ultimate bad guy in this in this situation. I don't think Poltergeist makes it clear what it is ultimately like.
Or is
calling
it
to
I think
task.
so
I think The Shining
complex?
pointed the finger at Jack Nicholson. He was the ultimate bad guy.
That guy was messed up. When I was trying to find things, he did other stuff in the 80s that could have been on here if it was not in 82.
What? No, he was a
I
great
think
guy.
I think
Not
it might
that
be a
gentleman.
bit off more than its Kachu effect, because I think all those things are connected, and the movie seems to be saying that, but it's not. Like, I think the relationship with the neighbors is setting up that perfectly. Like, you're all here and you're so close together, but they only have a contentious. Like, it's so isolating to live in suburbia.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
not
they don't
actually
help
part
each
of a
other.
community.
They don't
I-
help each other out. They don't learn about each other. They're packed together, but they're totally isolated.
The neighbor opens up the door and he's like, "Who are you?" It's like, dude, we
Right.
were just battling with remote
We're having
controls.
a delightful remote fight.
So, ultimately, do you guys think that it's not like you get to pick? You know, it's like it's up to the viewer what this movie is about. But it's just so many things. You know, we get so excited when a genre movie seems like it's about more, but you could also be about so much that you're about nothing.
Yeah, I think somebody could watch this movie and listen to what we're saying and go, "What? It's about a haunted house." Like, because
Well,
they
we're
like
very
just zoom by
superior movie
stuff.
watchers.
Well, they're
You know,
dumb.
really what it feels like to me is I had not realized it's based on a novel. It very much feels like we didn't quite have time to get in all the explanation that the novel had, but we did get to cover many of the biggest scenes from the novel. And so what you get left is kind of, in a way, it works, because why do you have to understand what's going on in your haunted house experience? Like,
Right.
what does it matter? Like, ultimately, you are being subjected to these horrors, and you're pulling together as a family, and you're finding a way through it. But on another level, it just feels disjointed. It feels like you want the movie to know what the point is, and that you can arrive there by viewing the movie, and not that even the movie isn't sure what it's saying. It's
I
like,
think-
yeah, dude, you could point to anything you like.
There's this thing where like both the best and worst screenwriters do of being like, the audience will figure it out.
Yeah.
Yes. But I guess the reason I think that scene on the hill is important, and why I think the movie does know a little, at least, of what it's pointing at, is because Craig T. Nelson is kind of fine with it. He goes like, that's messed up, but I guess they're dead, who cares? Until it actually affects his family. And it's already affecting his family, but now it affects him even harder after that. And that's when he's like, oh, we should let this whole place burn.
The other big one I want to talk about, the one that, like, man, if you did not get this in the first 98% of the movie, then wait until the last second. The Samuel L. Jackson comes out and asks the family to be on the Avengers moment, where Craig T. Nelson pushes a television out of the hotel room.
Yeah.
And how scared are we supposed to be from television from this movie? Like, what does TV have to do with our fears?
Yeah, is there an amusing ourselves to death? Found it very interesting that the first actual part of the movie, so we get right before the staticky TV, it's playing the national anthem.
Yeah.
And it's just like so interwoven, and it feels like you're all just fucking cows sitting there, and we're doing whatever we want because you're about to be the Wally people in the chairs, man.
Do you know where this movie got famous? Like, it was an okay box office hit, but where most people watched it?
On TV.
Yeah, like, he's just doing this, like, it's just this cycle of, like, well, we have to create a horror movie that people will watch incessantly to show them the horrors of, what their lives are actually like.
I bet you, Ryan, that that's something that the book leans into a lot more, because it also sounds like the kind of like elevated take that a book would have. Books are good, but TV's really bad.
I'm a book.
But I that was just another instance in which I felt like that you're supposed to feel like that's kind of a slam dunk moment, or like a fun moment in the movie, a good moment, but it feels kind of unearned. Like the TV was just like part of the problem of what was going on there. Honestly, like they had a lot more going on.
And maybe because it's 40 years later, I read it as like a laugh line, like, well, one last funny thing. Not like that they got it now. It's just like, oh, this dad does not understand what's haunting his family. Like,
Yeah, and it's probably you coach-looking motherfucker. I think that the bigger laugh line is the mom saying, "Oh, Carol Ann, you'll hurt your eyes," and turns it from static to a war movie.
Yes.
You know what?
Yeah.
This is where you'll be better off if you're just watching war.
That's one of those
America.
moments that are not subtle, but even though it's so like ham-fisted, you like have to give respect. Like, okay, that's a good move.
And then there's the family unit, the 1980s family unit. Poltergeist is clearly about family. It's about death, and it is certainly about birth. Keen observers will notice a little light birth imagery near the end. But what is it saying about these things, and what specifically 80s message is it delivering? Like, is it saying that suburbia is bad but family good? And it's also important, this is about the time in the show where we note how big of a Reagan biography Craig T. Nelson is reading at one point.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
he picks up a giant tome and just starts flipping through it.
It's called Reagan and Me, and Reagan literally steps out of the book. That's how big it is. The Ryan, are you referring to the light birth imagery when the mom goes into the portal and falls out with the rope tied around her stomach in the fetal position around her child, covered in what looks like afterbirth?
Yeah, is that like some sort of weird, I don't know, I'm going to make up a random nonsense word. Umbilical cord. And then, it's covered in pink fluid.
ectoplasm.
Ectoplasm.
It's not a metaphor for anything. It's ghost shit. Come on. And then there's the giant gaping.
I love that take of, hey, not a metaphor for anything.
Yeah, it's literally ectoplasm. It's something that
Conversation
actually
dumb.
happens from ghosts. Look, have you ever heard of the 80s?
And then there's a giant, like, gaping, like, womb tube. Forgot my biology terms.
No, yeah, it's a womb tube. But yeah, like, does that fit in the movie, or are they like, you know what? Let's do a birth thing right now.
I was thinking about this, Ryan, and I think that it's all part of the false ending, which is part of why this movie has a false ending. It earns it, I think, and it's that the heroes reject the lesson. Every hero rejects their lesson, and that's why they are subjected to the last 20 minutes of this movie. And for the mom, that moment is literally her true birth as a mother. Like, whatever birth she had where she had her kids, the movie doesn't recognize that as the true birth. The true birth happens at this moment, and she goes through the portal. What happens to her? She gets gray hair. She gets like sort of the wizened look of an older lady, and instead of, she embraces that, but when her daughter mocks it, that's when she rejects the message, and she doesn't
No,
learn.
I'm a cool mom.
Yeah, she doesn't learn her lesson. But I think that is part of setting up the false ending, which is you're supposed to feel like, yeah, okay, this is her moment of birth, and the lesson has been learned, and now the movie's over. And then it's, no,
But
it's not, idiots.
If you're staying in the haunted house that swallowed your daughter, even though some little lady said this house is clean, and you're moving but dyeing your hair the night before your big move, you haven't learned shit.
Well, that's the thing, though, Mike. That's like there's this element to Poltergeist that they never talk about it, but everybody is crazy in it. Like, the fact that they stay in that house, they say they're leaving, and then they just don't leave.
Right.
And I really think that is supposed to be like a Stephen King style. They're not thinking clearly, and so they're not really doing what they're supposed to do. Everybody knows you leave as soon as you get a chance to,
Right.
but they just linger. And I think I think the movie is doing that on purpose. I think you're supposed to be like, why are you still here? Wait, the movie's over. Go.
But
Continue.
even if you're told, even if you believe that your daughter's still in the house, and then you're told by Tangina that your daughter is still in this house, that's why they're staying, right?
Well, that's
right,
what
but we're saying after.
they stay. The first reason they stay makes
Oh,
perfect
why
sense.
don't you get the hell out of there?
Yeah, and then but they're like, okay, the movie has ended, and then they're like, we're not going to stay here tonight. We're going to leave, but in the meantime, we are going to stay here.
Yeah.
And then they like the kids go to bed. The wife takes a big long bath, and
they don't
like,
even go to bed like all together like
No.
one would. No, they're like, hey, well, we're gonna in the horror room. Yeah, the two youngest
'cause-
kids are gonna fall asleep again in there.
And that's what I mean, Mike. There must be some that the movie's point must be
Yeah.
that they are not thinking clearly. You know.
That Reagan book fucked me up. Like, when that Reagan book got pulled out, I really changed my entire viewing experience. And also, Greg, you brought up how this is based on a novel. One of the things in the novel that was changed is that JoBeth Williams, the actress who plays the mom, is a stepmom of Dana,
oh,
who is sexually promiscuous.
That's why she's always getting like stuck and stuff.
And
what? Oh, Christ!
Aiden, don't listen to that. Because when Craig T. Nelson is getting interrogated, he says that JoBeth Williams was 6, or that Dana is 16, and that JoBeth Williams is 32.
I thought they were just saying we had her when she was 15, and I was like, oh, the real horror of this movie.
Which makes sense
There
because
was a child bride.
this does feel like a young group of parents, right? Like boomers
Yeah.
that,
Oh, yeah.
that made it out, and you know what?
The
like,
mom is like smoking pot in the beginning of it. You can tell, like they in the beginning of this movie, the parents haven't answered the call of being parents. They're not truly parents yet. They're so checked out that they're not really doing the work. They learn the value of being parents over the course of this movie. I think.
there's a lot of
My
get the
parents
kids
got
to bed
haunted
so
then.
we can live our lives.
Hell
dude,
yeah,
for sure. Hell yeah, dude. Let's start
And
the
then-
fun part.
Also, fun part starts at 8.
Yeah.
6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Bullshit. After 8 p.m., let's smoke weed and forget about those kids. And then also how the mom dresses is sort of little boyish. You know, like the way that she, the shorts and the hat, like she wears a hat. And then the whole like, we already talked about this, but like, this is so crazy that there's ghosts in my house. Let's put Carol Ann with a football
Yeah,
helmet on the floor.
that's the funniest reaction.
That's childish. But apparently, in the book, she didn't have the kid when she was 16. She's the stepmom. And so, in the conservative realm, you have to make sure that your daughter, your real daughter, doesn't turn out like Dana.
Oh,
So
man.
that's why we have to have a rebirth and get Dana out of the house and go through all this stuff, go through a rebirth so that she is not being catcalled by construction workers.
because she's promiscuous. It's
Right.
her fault those adult men are catcalling her.
Exactly. I don't know. It seems a little too much to put on the movie, but that him pulling out that Reagan book really messed me up.
I think that's part of the movie's critique of the era, and also pretty bold. We're a year into Reaganomics, and the movie's just like, fuck this guy immediately, which I respect.
Is it weird now watching this movie that these are young parents? Like, these are 31, 32-year-olds just owning a house, having 3 kids, trying to make it work?
So you know,
Well,
it's
yeah,
a
I mean-
fantasy movie.
You can own a house if you don't mind it having like a portal to the hell realm in one of the walls.
All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to go on a shopping spree.
All right, sweetheart, all right. Daddy will get you a golden goose as soon as we get home.
No, I want one of those.
Gentlemen, you know what that means. That's my good friend Macklemore, and it's time for a shopping spree. We are going to run through this movie with a grocery cart in hand. You know what? I'm going to take 2 grocery carts. I like to pick big items, and we're going to buy whatever we want. At the end of each round, Aiden's going to decide who bought the best thing. And also, Aiden, we need a draft order. So who goes first?
Let's start with Mike today.
Mike's. We're going to start with Mike today. And then who goes second?
Greg,
Greg. And then Ryan goes.
of course.
Is this snake? I can't remember. Is this serpentine?
Serpentine, yeah.
Okay.
If I asked that, I'd get screamed at by Ryan.
Don't. The best thing to do is just not talk. Mike, you're up first. You have a grocery cart in front of you. You're going to run through Poltergeist. What are you going to buy?
First thing I want is a moving floor. You put something down, hey, I need that in the other room now, and it just takes it that way.
Wait, like a little girl with a helmet on? That's
Little girl with a helmet on, I don't know, a rotisserie chicken, a chair.
okay.
You find a force that moves stuff across.
I'm not putting anything in that force.
Why do you, especially your daughter, your precious daughter?
I wouldn't even put a steak in that kitchen.
Man,
All right. Well, Mike, you have the moving floor. Greg, what do you got?
all right. There's just something about movie pot. It always looks so good. So I'm going to twist one up with those parents. Hang out in their room. If that kid tries to come in, though, I'm jumping up and I'm closing the door. I'm like, nope, I'm having alone time with your folks.
Hey, assholes, shut the door beforehand. Why is that door wide open so Robbie can come in?
So, yeah, in fact, now that I've talked myself into it, I'm going to say not even just the pot. I want the session, the movie session. Craig T. Nelson, me, and Mary Jo Beth.
Greg's trying to make something happen with those two.
I'm open to the vibrations of this household. Like, whatever happens here, whatever spirit enters the room, we'll go with it.
So, Craig T. Nelson, and I'm going to say this because she became an older woman at the end and got gray hair. I'm going to say
Yeah.
Coach, Broach, and Greg.
Groach.
Groach and Greg. Just
No,
Groach.
Coach,
Just
Groach, and Groach.
I am not scared of clowns. I do think that clowns.
Are you asking us or telling us?
No, I'm telling you, I'm not scared of clowns. I think that clowns became Bacon theory of like I just say that I'm scared of clowns because I don't have a personality. But I know a lot of people who are, so I think it would be funny to have a clown who just sits in a rocking chair right by their bed.
Yeah.
What if you don't like it? Put it in the closet already, bro. Why are you keeping it right there? But sometimes that clown will be like, strangle you. I love how everything that Robbie's scared of just reaches out and just wants his throat. But
Yeah,
I'm taking
literally grabs him.
I'm taking that
Mostly
clown.
scared of being choked.
All right, Aiden. So round one is you have a moving floor that moves rotisserie chickens to your mouth because Mike is Garfield. You have a pot session, and based on how you're dressed, I think I already know how you're going to vote. And then you have a scary clown. What gets the point? Greg does.
Do it to him.
All right, I'm up next, and I got to keep my Robbie train going. I want a security tree outside my house, hopefully keeping robbers and muggers and criminals outside of my house instead of attacking me inside my
You think
bedroom.
that was a security tree? It tried
Yeah.
to swallow that kid.
That
Well,
kid's
because it's a tree. It's very easy to get Robbies and robbers confused.
So yeah, I want that tree. Mike or
Man,
Greg,
when
you're
that
up.
when that tree fucking got like sucked up by that tornado, wow, I did not see that coming. That was a surprising moment in the movie. It's like, oh, bye, tree. You're
Oh.
gone. Okay, that's cool.
Also, I hate to ruin Mike's recommendation at the end of the show, but Mike, that hole in the sky that the tree got sucked up into it. Was that straight out of Monster Squad?
Straight out of Monster Squad. That's where Dracula and Van Helsing go to be friends.
You know, we
They
haven't
wave
talked
goodbye.
about it a ton, but I like the specter of death is itself the horror of this movie. Really, is just confronting the idea that, like, you know, look around your family, like we're all pre-corpses, right? But like, what do we leave after we're gone? I think that's what's important. And what I want is, apparently there's a type of casket you can have that will just explode out of the ground. And I just think it would be super fun if I could get buried in one of these like randomly like Jack-in-the-Box caskets that just shoot you up out of the ground and then you just like launch out of it. I'm a goof, and I think I'd like to goof even after this life, and that seems like a fun way to do it.
Now, you have a sound. I'm also going to award you a sound that comes out of the casket when it arises. Is it like scary? Is it like hoo-ha? Or is it hello?
Oh no, I'm going full on like big spring sound, like boing, and I imagine I will be like attached to the inside of the casket, so I'll kind of come out like. You know, like, it's a way to have fun, you know, at the end of everything.
Hey,
One last little joke.
It's about having fun.
Yeah, right? It's about keeping it real and having a good time.
Mike, what do you got?
I want a crawling ceiling. Sometimes your house is cramped.
A
You don't have
moving
enough room
floor
to
and
work
a
out.
crawling ceiling?
Now
Crawling
I
on
could
the
be on the
ceiling.
ceiling and do all my workouts up there. Also, she seemed kind of turned on for a while on it, so maybe it feels good to be up on that ceiling.
I got to say, she was like, because this is the second, third act that we've been talking about of like, this house is clean. Oh no, what's happening? She seemed like, instead of freaking out, she was like, come on, man.
She quite literally rolled with the punches there. She was just like, this is happening now. I'm just going to figure it out.
All right, Aiden, who gets the point? It's Mike with the crawling ceiling, Greg with the exploding casket, or me with the tree.
I gotta give it to the tree this time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but
I never win this shit. Go ahead and hit my
Ryan,
button.
would you
Yeah.
say that tree's bark is worse than its bite?
I would say that, Greg.
Would you say that now?
No, I will not fucking.
Oh, you're not going to say it. Okay.
No. I will not give in to your boyoyoyoings.
Have you seen the movie? It's clearly not. That bite could eat you.
Also, that's true. All right, Mike, you're up.
I like road trips, and I like a vehicle that gets good gas mileage and can fit all my pals. I want that station wagon.
Nobody's picked a car before Greg
know, I'm
ever in a
swooping
shopping
it from
spree.
Greg.
Seriously, this is the first vehicle.
And I
not
think that's
taken by
because
me.
it's a station wagon.
Station wagons rule. Don't you remember sitting in the far back that you're facing the driver and you're just like flipping them off? And
The way backpack?
yeah, the way back.
All right. Mike has picked a station wagon. Good start. Greg?
The early on in this movie, when we're really seeing like when the critique is clearly on consumerism, there is a guy like biking. The big game is on, and he's eagerly biking back. And what does he have but like a pallet of 1980s beers? And a lot of people don't know this, but like since the 1980s, they've changed the way you open cans and the way like the mouth of it looks and everything. And I would love for some of these 80s beers. Never drank an 80s beer. I was too young myself to ever indulge in an 80s beer.
We should
But
go on
these-
eBay and buy a
Dude.
pallet of 80s beers.
And he drops them so they're like exploding, and I don't know why, but that makes them look even more like refreshing.
So
and
refreshing.
tasty. And I'm already partying with these parents. So
You're partying
my-
with the parents and you're jumping in and out of the casket, so why not shake it up in there?
And right, I'm opening a beer, and it's like, whoa, we all got beer on our pants. This is crazy. We can't just wear these beer-soaked pants.
He walks in with let's say 12 beers, and
Yeah.
then 2 or 3 of them are exploding, and he just sits down and lets them explode the entire time.
Because
the
that's
80s
how
was a
in-
weird time.
That's how into the game he is, that he can't even he's just letting beer spray all over him. He doesn't care.
80s beers, man, they were crazy. In that same vein, I am going to select an all-powerful remote control where I can
Shit.
change
Yeah.
the channel of my neighbor's TV. And they kept switching it to the same thing. Well, my kid wants to watch Mr. Rogers. And so it was just a bunch of men screaming that they couldn't watch football. I've never seen 6 gentlemen more into football. Like, they were screaming at
Dude.
every play.
Yeah, they never stop being excited about what's going on the field. Like the quarterback is dropping back, and they're like, "Oh!" And then they're like, after the play, they're all walking back to the huddle, and they're just like, "Yeah, go, go, go!"
Well, the thing is, none of them know the game, but none of them want to admit that they're not as masculine as their 80s brethren.
That's true. Also, they're being sprayed with beer this entire time, so that might be part of the screaming. All right, Aiden, we got a station wagon, a pallet of 80s beers, or an 80s remote control.
With all honesty, that station wagon was badass.
What the
Yeah.
hell?
Hell yeah.
I gotta give it.
Play to the judge, boys.
Respect.
This is insane. We're never having another 16-year-old on here again. So that's the shopping spree. Mike, you got a moving floor, a crawling ceiling, and a station wagon to put in between. Greg, you have a Groach sesh, which is Coach, his wife, and Greg smoking weed, an exploding casket. And when Greg explodes out of that casket, in one hand is weed for Coach and Broach, and the
Yeah.
other hand is an 80s pallet of beers.
Frosty beers.
And I have Deadly Clown, Deadly Tree, and an 80s remote to rule them all. That's shopping spree. When we come back, more Poltergeist. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening so far. And let me just tell you that everything ahead of this commercial is much better than what came before it. That's my guarantee. While I have you here, let me tell you about a website. It's called yourpopfilter.com. And it's everything you need that's related to Pop Filter. Everything Mike, everything Ryan, everything Greg, everything Cassie, everything is there at yourpopfilter.com. While you're there, go to yourpopfilter.com/Amazon. Make that your new Amazon bookmark and do your shopping from there. That way, we get a little piece of the action and Amazon doesn't. Make sure you're also listening to everything that Pop Filter has to offer, which includes the Superhero Show, a podcast that covers every single TV show that's based on a comic book or comic book property, and Movie of the Year, where we sit down and try and figure out what is the single greatest movie of any given year. That's Superhero Show, that's Movie of the Year, and that's yourpopfilter.com. Rate, subscribe, review. Bye. All right, gentlemen, let's get to the scary parts of the scary movie. What elevates Poltergeist amongst other horror films? Is it just the 80s talk and like showing us what it was like at that time, or is there actual horror elements that make its reputation make sense?
I think, and I don't know if this is what there's like the schlock and gore horror fans, and then there's general horror fans. I don't want to generalize anything, but I don't think this is what people think of when thinking of something that is horrifying. But the most horrifying thing to go through is watching two parents lose their minds because they think they've lost their youngest kid. I would say that actual grief that they're going through and madness, and it is pinned, and you care about these characters more than in a traditional horror.
And we've hit around this before, though, but did the movie lose out a lot in that it had to go through classic set pieces and get away from how horrible it would be to lose your child?
I think yes, in a way, because I have to tell you, the way in which they continue to live in that house with the room, they just close the door to that room, and then occasionally they walk by and they're like, you know what, I'm just going to pop in there for a second to see if it's better or not. And then there's the part where the mom opens it and there's just shrieking just comes out of it. And
Nope,
nope,
not better,
not yet.
no. It's
But
so
I
bad.
feel like, isn't that a great metaphor for what it's like to live with profound grief? That you still do normalish things, and then there's just part of the world is just completely wrong. And it's kind of just your own personal wrongness in the world, but it's like this howling, shrieking at the center of what you do. And so I just think that as an actual metaphor, that's very powerful. And there's a way in which the set pieces take you away from that powerful metaphor sometimes.
And I think that explains too, Greg, the we can't go in the room because that's too horrifying.
Right.
And we can't change the room into an exercise room because that's defeating, or you
There's
don't want
too
to
much
get
of
over
the
it.
wrong type of energy in there to
Right.
do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And also that means that you're forgetting the person. You're attempting to get over it. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of grief that holds grief in. As terrible as grief is, you also don't want to get over it.
Yeah, because you don't
yeah.
Yeah, because that's the second death, right? When you get over that grief, that's when the person has really kind of passed forever, because it's just you realize you have moved on, and that's a scary feeling to do.
Right.
That.
And another part of scary feeling and grief and death is every once in a while just a giant skull with spider legs will pop out of that room.
That's also a basic part of grief. I remember when certain people
The
in my
stages.
life have died. Yeah, it was the scary skull with spider legs.
And you try like bargaining with it. You're like, please don't do this. I'll give you money.
To be honest, I can't believe that I took the clown and the tree in that draft. I should have
Yeah.
taken that giant clown with the spider legs. Like, that guy was scary.
The movie had a lot of stuff to throw at you. Like, they took a lot of swings at horrifying you, and they didn't just, like, rest on any one thing over and over again. Like, there was always a new way to try to get you, and you could get through 2 or 3 of them in a row that didn't really scare you, but you were coming up on one that was going to get you for sure.
It could be argued, I don't think, even with the pedigree of people behind this movie, that they succeeded in it, that the house was finding whatever scared each individual. And that's why it was all over the place.
But-
I just think it was all over the place.
Not in a hacky way where it was like, now we will walk this character through their nightmare
Right.
scenario. And then, like, it was really all at once. And to the point where, like, the family is used to it in this really dark way of just being like, yeah, we don't sleep. Our lives are
Yeah.
awful. And then, like, the most telling part is when the psychologist, who is supposed to be a pro at this, spends like 5 minutes in the house and cannot put her teacup in her saucer. And even the mom brings that up and she's like, I saw you, bitch. I saw you. You were shaking your hand. Is it possible? Let's talk about like I don't like this term because I don't know. It doesn't reflect well on movie critics, I think. But like, let's talk about the dated thing. Is it possible for a movie this dated to still be scary? And does this movie succeed in any of those ways?
I think like you have to, if you're like, well, it looks fake. Everything looks fake. Shut up. Like I'm sick of that version of it.
What
It
looks faker
dated.
than CGI, Mike?
CGI, yeah, is
Yeah.
the most booty-looking stuff out there.
Just look, fucking noodle men fighting each other.
yeah.
But I think there is still scary moments because you have the underlying grief and all, but like the mom at the end falling into the skeleton-filled pool, like that.
Literal skeleton.
That should scare all of you.
Yeah, those are
Like,
real skeletons. Those
Yeah.
are real dead bodies.
What do you mean?
Spielberg
they
and
used?
Hooper have decided or denied this, but the legend is, and Joe Beth Williams to this day believes that it was cheaper to buy literal, actual skeletons than get fake ones, and so that's what they put in the pool.
I feel like they didn't
Spooky,
learn the lesson of their own movie.
Scary skeletons.
Although, if they had just played that song, the
Yeah,
skeletons
dude.
would have danced away and not been a
Yeah.
problem.
The thing I appreciate in this movie is one could read those as like undead or zombies. I think it's pretty clear these skeletons are not moving around. They're just popping up out of the ground and like landing on people, and that's enough. They don't have
Yeah.
to be moving. Like, it's scary enough to have a skeleton shoot out of the ground and land on you.
But why
I
are the
would say
skeletons
so.
always saying boing?
You've been Gregged. You've been Gregged.
That should be the thing in your casket, almost like one of the speaker in a birthday card that talks. You've been Gregged. Buy my book. Aiden, let's go to you. The effects here, where I want to talk about the steak, I want to talk about the skeletons, and I want to talk about the guy pulling his face off. When you
Yeah.
see things like that, is there any scariness? Is it just kitsch? Is it camp for camp's sake? Like, do you roll your eyes, or is it funny? How do you react to that stuff?
I mean, I saw it more as like charming to its age. Like, if I'm gonna be honest, like I said earlier, you could definitely start a 9-year-old on this movie. But I mean, it's definitely yeah. The effects were charming, honestly. Like, and yeah,
Quaint, like.
Look at them try to do it. Look how they couldn't do it, but they gave it their best shot, didn't they?
right.
I do think that Greg's whole thing of like, it's just stuff that happened, and there wasn't that tension built that like really makes Greg lose sleep. That's
Yes.
also not going to make Aiden's little brother lose sleep. Like, I think that when Aiden's little brother sees a guy pull his fake face off, he'll be fine tonight.
Oh,
But-
like it's not going to traumatize him.
I don't think it's going to traumatize him, but so many people have said, including Spielberg, this should be your first horror movie. Like, I think that was an intent in making it.
Oh, that's cool. Like, yeah, you need to get the freak kids something. Give them their little entryway.
Okay,
And
Mike.
judged by that standard, isn't it a tremendous success then?
Yes.
Like, I mean, that really, yeah.
I mean, the creepiest things we haven't gotten to yet, maybe we will in awards, but aren't the effects,
No. And yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, the movie doesn't give you any indication that it thinks those are the scary parts. it seems to think that those are the adventurous parts. You know, those are the fun blockbuster parts. I do think the movie is aware of what is scary and does begin to lean on it pretty effectively. But it's just kind of fun to have those big skeletons.
A movie that I saw 100 times when I was 5 years old had a librarian going, shh.
Yeah, dude.
And then all of a sudden turning around and being way worse than Large Marge ever could. So, and I think that librarian in Ghostbusters is scarier than anything in this movie.
I would agree with that. That's one of the
hate being
scariest.
shushed. Yeah.
All right, Aiden, it's speed round time. Nicely done. All right, Aiden, fast and furious fingers. There's a lot of points to be earned here. If anybody rings in by saying their name first, give the other person a point.
All right.
In this prequel to Coach, why did he never bring up his real estate background in the TV show Coach?
Because he was so horrified that he just had to leave it behind, and he was just like, I'm just into coaching college ball now.
That guy from Coach talked about coaching a lot.
Yeah,
He really did.
He was so focused. I mean, once you decide you were going to go by Coach, that means that you
That
are
sort of-
fully committed to the new life.
Dictates your entire life.
I'm more than sports, guys. Come on, ask me about what I've been reading lately.
At some point,
Mostly
does,
books about coaching.
at some point, does all the Star Wars merch in this house begin to seem like a fuck you to George Lucas? Is there a way in which we can read it as part of what is wrong with this family, according to the movie? And this goes back to our television conversation of, God damn, do you have to have a television in every room? Because pop culture is invading your family, guys.
And I feel like this movie made me mindful of E.T. because it's the same thing in E.T. where it's not just that they have Star Wars stuff. There's a part where the little girl rolls over in this movie and there's a Star Wars action figure in her mouth. It's like you can feel them like drowning in the Star Wars merch. And I feel like between this and E.T., the point is kind of like, look at how much of this shit this guy put out on the market. Like, our houses are just full of all this kitschy crap.
There's a part where Robbie puts away like 10 Star Wars toys and then goes back to bed and the camera follows him, and then above his bed are 19 more Star Wars toys.
See, to
Which
me,
is
it just felt
accurate,
true to
right?
life. Yeah, like because in Elliot, his room was covered in Hulk stuff in ET.
Right.
And so it's this is the age, and if it's 82, this would be the age where Robbie would be obsessed with Darth Vader.
What this reminds me of is my idea that I had for Marvel and DC Comics, where Marvel should treat DC Comics like they are the fictional characters of that world.
I love that.
Uh-huh.
That's beautiful.
And DC should do vice versa. And I feel like Spielberg and Lucas are doing this thing where Spielberg is admitting that Star Wars is a big factor of this, every movie that I make. Lucas only did it by having ETs at a C-SPAN meeting in
ET's
Phantom
at a
Menace.
C-SPAN and Willow was in. Wait, is that George Lucas or Spielberg? Shit, that's Ron Howard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Never mind.
You just
Stricken
showed
from
your
the
whole
record.
ass.
You can give Greg a point for that.
Ryan,
Anytime
I'd
anybody
like to
shows their
think-
whole ass.
Ryan, I like to think that there's a world in which the predators are like normal and they go about their lives, and the aliens are the aliens in that universe.
Oh, wow.
And then there's another universe where the aliens are just like business people and stuff, but the predators are predators in that universe.
How adorable would it be to see like a baby alien with a predator doll?
Like a bonnet. Yeah.
So the house wasn't exactly clean, huh? How does this movie handle the topic of paranormal experts? And you know what? I'm going to add on to this. Religion. Is this movie actually dealing with the whole, like angels and God go to the light? Is this movie care about religion at all?
I think this movie is saying that both science and religion are so poor at trying to describe what's going on in life, and that they both take a huge fucking swing and miss in this movie because neither one is more ridiculous than the other. They're both doing a pretty bad job.
Everybody's
What
like, I don't know, this?
What I like is both the experts, the science and the religion, the spiritual aspects of it. Both of them work in tandem. They are buddies, and they both throughout are like, I don't know how to do this stuff. And the coolest thing is one of the best lines is Zelda to what Mary Jo Beth. What is it? To Zelda the mom. She's like, okay, I gotta go in. And the mom's like, I should do it. And she's like, you've never done this before. She's like, but you've never done this before. And her, no, you're right. You should do this.
Actually, yeah, this is still just Poltergeist 1, right? Yeah, okay, I don't know how to do this.
If you've never been in a movie theater before, that line is what movie theater people laugh at. Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
bet that movie theater was uproarious at
Dude,
that
yeah,
line.
rolling on that one.
As they should be.
No, yeah, you do it. And one more. Did it seem like they bailed on the sexually active daughter there for a second? I swear to God, they all got in the car.
Dude.
And when she was standing like 10 feet away, and they were like, you know what? She has had sex before. Let's get the hell out of here.
They're like, get in the car. And she's like, what's going on? And they're like, get in the car. And I swear, Coach just puts the hammer down, dude, and they drive away. And in the next scene, she's clearly in the car, but they left her, dude. They left her.
And
Greg
now
T.
that's the
Nelson
ghost of her.
takes a cassette out that is wrapped in cellophane. It's called the Coach soundtrack. Unwraps all the cellophane. And you guys remember how hard it is to get those cassette tapes out of the cellophane. Unwraps it and puts that tape in, and then gets the hell out of there without his daughter. And we don't know if it's her daughter, but we know for sure it's his. And he bails.
Well,
Not
it's
without
also
abandoning my daughter.
that's Robbie gets a send away, and she does not. She does. This is the second time the family just lets her disappear from their lives for big chunks of this movie.
She's had sex, dude.
She's having sex, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do
they
we
got
know
her
that? Do they
ostracized.
talk about that?
Yes, she's always making out with boys. Like when she comes back, right before they abandon her, although the movie loses the courage to stick to that, right before they abandon her, you can see she's got like hickeys on both neck. It's classic, like she's getting punished for...
And then there's the
Down.
line where the mom is like, "Oh, we got to get out of here. We'll go to the Holiday Inn
That's-
on Route 55."
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
And she's like, "Oh, I remember that one." And then smokes a cigarette.
Yeah.
I have seen things, honey.
All right, that's the end of the speed round. Who got a point there, Greg?
Ryan, actually.
Oh,
Yeah, dude, you're cleaning up today,
I
Ryan.
did. Yeah, you guys should have your nephews on the show more often, by the way.
Sure.
Gotta be a fucking nephew.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, the awards. All right, gentlemen, it's awards time. This movie was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. 1-0.
What?
But that's okay. We're going to go with our favorite Oscar, which is, hey, did you watch this movie or not? Either way, here's what we think that you should watch. Greg, what's your recommendation?
My recommendation just flew out of my head as soon as you asked me what it was. Oh, no, I remember. If you like
if
ghosts,
that ever happens to you, Greg, say movie of the year, the podcast. That's going
Movie
to
of
get you
the
some
year.
points.
See the
it's
Monster
actually
Squad.
I'm going to actually I'm going to actually say a completely different podcast than movie of the year. If you love ghosts, things that go bump in the night, and everything about the realm of spirituality, listen to Ghost Church by Jamie Loftus. Greg heads know I love Jamie Loftus and I love everything she does. If you love the Lolita podcast, the My Year in Mensa podcast, the Acre cast, well then I think you should definitely check out
Holy
this podcast.
shit. Jamie Loftus is your girl. Like, these are all things that you are into.
Yes, definitely. And she's so good at podcasting. I'm like, I listen to her podcast. I'm like, should I be better at podcasting? And then I'm like, never mind. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're fine. But it's all about American spirituality, which was girls maybe pretending to commune with spirits, and it kind of launched a whole religion. And it was like such a big event in America. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle got involved in it. Harry Houdini got wrapped up in it. And Jamie Loftus does a really good job of talking about the history of spiritualism, the modern spiritualist church, and just the nature of, what do we believe and why do some belief systems seem normal and other belief systems seem silly when kind of everything is silly.
That sounds awesome. I'm
Ghost
gonna
Church.
I'm gonna go with a movie called The Haunting, which is based on The Haunting on Hill House,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, right.
1950s movie where a bunch of people are in a haunted house, and I like this movie because the house is going crazy, but the house is not the main character. And I think that's what Poltergeist gives us, and I think The Haunting sort of gave that to Poltergeist of let's get into the complexities and perplexities of all these characters that are in this house, and that's
Yeah.
sort of what makes it haunted. Like if you weren't the family you were, then these ghosts would have picked something else to do. But they know what messes you up. They know what gets you off, and they know what messes you up. And I sort of like that the house plays that. It's also classy. I think that the one thing that came from the Hooper, I don't think Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a classy movie. I think that the one thing that came from the Hooper Spielberg, partnership is that this is a classy movie. And I think the Haunting
Pinkies up
is
in
too.
the air the entire time.
It's just
Fancy ass ghosts.
I mean, like you can't.
Tea is served in this movie.
It's almost. I think Poltergeist is almost the Princess Bride of horror movies, in that you can.
Oh, dude.
You can put this on
Right.
with every generation of your family and enjoy it because it's not gross out for gross out's sake. It's like I think it's smart but not overly smart, and I think The Haunting is like that version of old Hollywood. Mike, what
That
do
was
you
a
got?
great answer, Ryan.
Thanks, Greg. You can give Greg a
Indeed.
point anytime he says great answer, Ryan.
Ryan.
I'd
got
like
one,
a point
too.
if you want to just give me one.
Mike.
No, that's 2 points, Aiden.
Oh, very impressionable.
Even it out. Yeah.
In a very similar vein, Mike Flanagan's Haunting of Hill House, which
Oh,
is his
shit!
first series for
The other
Netflix. And yeah, it's about this family, and they ruin it. It goes back and forth between when the kids were kids and now the kids are adults, and just how they deal with grief. And it's so clearly grief is a metaphor of them losing their mom. And you don't really know why they lost her for a while, and was the house haunted, or is the mom a Looney Tune?
Mike.
Somewhere in the supermarket, probably, right? That's where I would always get separated from
I'm
mine.
just screaming looking for her.
For me, it was a swap meet.
But just a killer cast in general, and yeah, I like it's definitely my favorite of Flanagan's Netflix series. Is check it out.
Yeah, and like the whole, you think the house is haunted because of ghosts, sure, but like it really is the disgusting thing you do behind closed doors of your perfect suburban home. That like that, like it's sort of the American beauty of horror of like the whole
Any horror movie, you're like, okay, what's the real world
Yeah.
thing that this is talking about?
the whole thing you wanted to do was like close yourself off and be like every other family, but you're not, or you are in that you're terrible. Good Rex, guys. We're gonna go to biggest scare, and we're gonna start with, of course, Greg. When did your fingers wrap themselves around your eyes the most?
Well, I've talked about it a lot, but this movie has a false ending, which I fell for about as hard as you possibly could. And everything really bad is on the other side of the false ending, including the mom is running so recklessly right by the pool. And I can't tell you how much I was like, Joe Beth Williams, if you fall into this pool, I am going to turn this car right around and stop watching this movie. And man, she comes so close to not falling in the pool, but the ledge gives and she falls in, and she is just absolutely surrounded by skeletons, just
Drowning in skeletons.
and they are all over her. And I realized as it happened that I remembered this part of the movie because I had read that they were real skeletons.
Yeah.
And at the moment that she is covered in them, I'm like, wait, those are real fucking skeletons. And I was like, okay, I'm fucking scared. This scares me. I'm scared.
And she does that thing like, you know how in movies, if your main character is driving and then somebody puts their hands over that driver's eyes, he just does whatever he can to the steering wheel. That's what she does when she gets to the pool. Like, she has a meltdown and loses control of all limbs.
She forgets how to pool pretty hard.
All right, so we have Joe Beth in the pool. Mike, what do you got?
I'm gonna go back to the one that, as a kid, the thing that haunted me forever, to the point when I saw it now, I was like, that's what it looked like the whole time? Even that's what's been scaring me, but it was burned into my brain for 30 whatever years, and it is the dude ripping his own face off. That freaked me out. So, like, if we're looking at this as baby's first horror movie, I think that is terrifying, because you're like, that's my face. I don't want to do that to my face. I'm just trying to look in a mirror.
I just kept being like, this looks like shit. This looks like shit. This looks like shit, so that it couldn't hurt me.
When it cuts to a human being's face and then it cuts back, and it is just a pile of Play-Doh with...
Dude, it looks like something at a Knott's Berry Farm. It seriously looks like one of the dummies at Knott's Berry Farm. This is like a barely even like human-formed face.
All right, Aiden, you decide, what is the biggest scare to you? Is it the mom falling into the pool full of skeletons, or a guy with a pudding head running his fingers gently through his pudding head?
Puddinhead Wilson.
I gotta give it to the pool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
that-
going to be Greg on that one.
Yeah.
All right.
Pool party.
The next award is the opposite. It's coolest ghost trick. What if you were in this house and you were like, you know what? I don't mind that. Mike, what do you got?
Do you know what's dope as hell is like, oh, your kid's upstairs, and you're like, hey, I need that book because I'm going to the library. Give me the book. They don't need a rundown. They throw that thing right into the closet, and you catch it because you're in the living room.
Oh, and every time Mike caught it, it would just be so triumphant. Just be like, that's a cool trick. Greg, what do you got?
This part gets a lot of crap because I think it grosses people out. But one of the
Maggot
toughest
steaks.
things about a steak is that to get a nice one, you have to really tenderize it yourself, and that can be a big process, right? This house, it tenderizes steak all on its own. Does it go too far sometimes? Obviously, yes. Like, there's going to be a balancing act here. But I imagine you could take like rump roast and turn it into like strip steak or something delicious just by getting that nice tenderizing action.
I
of the
swear to God, if
Poltergeist.
you put a rump roast on that counter, and that counter knows it's a rump, the things that are going to come out of that meat. No, dude, don't do that.
Maggots. It's really the one go-to. Sorry, Greg. I wouldn't have said maggot steak if I actually thought you were going to say maggot steak.
Well,
I'm
you
certain
just-
you'd do anything else, and
I kind of felt like I had the floor, but you jumped on in there.
I'm so sorry.
I think I see where he's going, everybody.
But I didn't. I thought I was zigging while you were zagging.
Yeah. Well,
We zigged together.
Well, you guys are both acting like Ziggy, so that's fine. Aiden, it's up to you. We have maggot steak. Or
that I wouldn't.
okay,
Self-tenderizing steak.
Yeah.
self-tenderizing steak.
There
as
you
a-
go.
As a thing that you want, or a little teleportation hole where you can grab a book like a champion. I feel like I'm leading the witness a lot here.
You know, I'm gonna be honest.
Objection.
The steak,
yeah.
Yeah,
steak,
dude.
it just, that one surprised me big time.
And that's what you want in a house. Greg, it's the
Yeah,
point.
right?
Slithered.
Greg, it's up to you for cringiest moment of 1982's Poltergeist.
Okay. I don't get this part, but I had misunderstood and I had misremembered that this movie was the whole thing was that it was on a Native American burial ground. But there's actually a character that literally says that's not what's going on, but it's the boss, and he kind of puts a little stank on it, and I was just like, what's his point? Like, are they saying that like we care more about sites of Native American burial than we do of white people where white people are buried? And if so, like, what kind of weird comment is he making? It feels like a proto or like a very early version of like, you know who's really got it rough is white men. And so I don't know, there was just something so weird about the way he's like, don't worry.
So wait, he
it's
invented
not-
the internet? He invented comment threads?
Yeah, I'm not. It's not it's not the worst cringe I've ever had, but I was like, what's he saying here? I don't quite get it. I don't know what it adds up to.
And like I feel like the whole movie you can feel his fear. And that like even when Craig T. Nelson comes out and his family has the bug, he's like, "Oh God, this is because of me. This is because of all of my awful decisions
Yeah.
my entire life." Mike, what's your cringiest moment?
Early on, the eldest daughter is leaving for
Dana.
school, and the full-on adult
yeah.
construction workers catcall her, and the mom sees it, and the mom just laughs and laughs and
What
laughs.
is-
It's
it
like,
bec-
please,
it becomes like
sexually
a
harass my
Mentos
daughter
commercial.
more.
It's like everybody gives each other a big thumbs up, and then it's just like, sexual harassment. It's crazy.
It's a living.
The mom just like drinks coffee and she's like, "Oh men, when are
Those
they
were
gonna
the
stop
days.
men?" All right, Aiden. So, what is the cringiest moment of the movie? The fact that it's definitely not an Indian burial ground, or these construction workers making like weird comments to the 16-year-old.
I'm gonna just say it's construction workers.
Okay.
It's construction workers.
Yeah.
She was proud of her. She was proud of her daughter
Yeah.
at that point.
Oh man, that was
Weird messages, movie.
What the hell? This is gonna be a weird one, Mike. Director signature. We're going with Toby Hooper.
Okay. I'm going to do the one where if you're not super familiar, it's what moment stood out, right?
Uh-huh.
And the moment that stood out to me is when the big in the real ending, the giant head comes out,
Yes.
and Coach just starts screaming, and the camera zooms in on his mouth, and then zooms in on his eyes, and then just cuts to his full face screaming again. It's just this weird triple quick cut that made me laugh so hard. But it's the first time I was like, oh, somebody's directing this. Like, there's
Would it have been better if in the middle of that shot, it just like there was a chyron that said 1982, and it did that thing where like 1982 appeared all around the screen?
Yes, it just floating. It reminded me of fucking Wayne's World when they're like, whoa, when the camera's going in and out.
Greg, what is your Toby Hooper signature moment?
For me, it was the shot of the family like walking to the Holiday Inn room, and they all look like they've just been through the wars, and they all look so worn out. And in a movie where you're trying to figure out sometimes what the stakes were, what the point was, exactly what was going on, this shot, it's like so clear. This family went through hell, but here they are together, and they finally have learned the lesson and learned not to reject it. And this is them through all of that. And I just thought that was the most like clear the movie was in terms of like this is what we were talking about.
Right, and so the director's signature moment, the moment where like he was like, I'm gonna put my stamp, my thumbprint on this movie. We have two options. One is what Greg said, the family's walking through the hallway and like they have made it. This is the point. Or what Mike said, which is constant zoom ins on body parts.
I gotta give this one to Mike.
Mike.
That was too good. The zoom-ins.
There were zoom ins. All right, and we're going to throw in a monkey wrench here. Greg, Spielberg, director's moment.
Oh, okay, well then, if it's Spielberg, we love to talk about Spielberg and light. Like, his love of film comes down to, I think, primarily a love of light. He thinks it's great. This movie has the most over-the-top strobe effects. Lately, it's become common to be like, watch out if you have epilepsy. Even if you don't have epilepsy,
You will get
be
epilepsy.
careful watching this fucking movie because it will just flash bright lights in your eyes nonstop. And I swear, I was like, I'm starting to feel ill.
There's this
I
thing that
think
we
that-
always talk about where, like, especially with a baby asleep upstairs, I have to have my finger on the volume button.
Oh, yeah. For
I watched
sure.
some of this on my iPad, and I had to have my finger on the light button. Like, I couldn't take it, dude. Like, I was going through migraines.
And I just felt like that was like Spielberg trying something while somebody else technically had his hand on the wheel. He wanted to see how over the top he could go with light, and you did it, bud. You went there.
Mikey, what do you got?
I felt like the suburban setup that he often does, and his let's follow this like slice of life dude with a Palado beer, and then these kids are gonna have RC cards trying to
Yes.
chase him and trip him. Like all of that felt like that could go in any one of his movies, and he'd be like, "Yeah, this tracks."
And, like, that was allegedly the only scene that he directed.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Wow. Shit. Then that's a perfect answer.
Damn, I'm good.
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer.
Toby Hooper said that the only scene that he directed was some bullshit outside with kids and race cars. Like, he didn't even know it was in his own movie. But yeah, like, that's classic suburban life. So, Aiden, who wins? The perfect answer or Greg's strobe lights?
Greg.
Yeah,
Strobe lights. I'm sorry.
That's why you have a 16-year-old.
I love it.
I almost passed out during those scenes.
Dude, seriously, it gets pretty intense.
I would close one eye, and I was like, that doesn't work. I closed two eyes. Now I'm not watching the movie. Like, it was hard.
I literally
But I
looked
could
away.
still
I
see
was
the
like, well,
strobe.
I'm gonna check in a like 30 seconds here.
You know what you do is you face your iPad towards the wall and just dance. Just do a dance party.
I think find the rhythm of the strobe and just blink with it. So you're always just singing it on light.
All right, Mike, you are up. This is our final award of the night, pound for pound performance. Who did the best acting, scene by scene?
I'm glad to finally not just say here's the star. Do you know
Coach?
who I was blown away? I would argue one that Coach is not the star of this movie. Jo Beth is, but I think Zelda Rubinstein. She had gravitas when she needed gravitas, and she let down some fucking laugh lines. The one I mentioned earlier, and then at the end when they're like, we have to film a thing, and she like primped before they turned it on, and she's
Yeah.
like, even though we all went through something horrifying, I get what my job is here now. And I think Zelda Rubinstein got her job. She got the tone of the movie, and she crushed it.
I'm not talking shit on her. I'm talking shit on the film. But there's one part where they stumble so hard, and it's like clearly for a trailer or something. Like somebody's like, hey, so what should we do? And then she just stands there
Yes.
for like 30 seconds. And then finally the camera moves in. So she stands there for another 30 seconds. And she's like, well, I guess we'll get these ghosts. Like,
Yeah, dude.
this movie is sloppy at points. It's sloppy toppy. Zelda, and like, I think that she's an important person in this world, in this movie, because she does this thing, and I think this is intentional by the directors. Of we're so obsessed, we're so hatred. We have so much hatred for parents, but we're so obsessed with children and grandparents. What if we combine them? I think that's with the voice and the stature. I think that's what they're doing with this casting. And is she the most iconic person from this movie, even more than
Yeah.
the skinny guy from Poltergeist 2?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This house is clear.
It's
So
clean.
iconic. Ace Ventura would
Ace
say.
Ventura did it. Greg, pound for pound performance.
I guess for me, and Mike sort of like took a swipe at this, but I think it is Jo Beth Williams. We like who is the movie about? Who grows? Who changes the most? And we really see this woman go from someone who is sort of checked out as a parent to someone who is deeply invested, and we really see like she goes through this second birth experience, and it really like until she gets the stripes of fighting for her children.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like this rejects the image of mother as just like the figure at home who smiles and makes a sandwich, and this says no, mother is the figure who is like a fierce fighter, and JoBeth
And a
Williams,
sacrificer.
yeah, and JoBeth Williams captures all of these different facets of that, and you see her scene by scene like get a little bit go from one to the other, and all in all, I thought it was actually a really subtle performance, in like considering all the just absolute zaniness and over the topness of this movie.
All right, Aiden, best performance of the movie, pound for pound, scene by scene. Was it the mom or was it the medium?
Medium.
I gotta give it to the mom. The mom.
That's
yeah.
Greg.
Greg.
Greg takes that down. We're going to take a break, and we're going to figure out who Aiden thinks won the Poltergeist show and how well Poltergeist will do in the future.
Hola, Filterinos. I just wanted to interrupt real briefly and say thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. If you want to support us a little more directly, you can go to patreon.com/yourpopfilter. There, depending on what tier you pick, $1 a month, $5 a month. If you're crazy, anything more than $5 a month, don't do that. You can get extra content. There's extra shows, extra series, behind-the-scenes stuff. You could pay for Ryan to draw you a picture. I can write you a poem. You can get the shirts off our very own backs. All of that and so much more over at patreon.com/yourpopfilter. While you're on the internet, you should check out Shady Monk. He does all the tunes you've been listening to. He's on Bandcamp, he's on Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever kids get their music these days that I'm too old to know. Shady Monk lives there. You can probably follow him on Twitter and Instagram as well. That's Shady Monk. Wherever you get music, check him out.
Well, we talked a lot of shit tonight on the movie Poltergeist, but I, for one, think that it is still a classic 1982 movie. I think that the 80s, basically after this point, are only just Spielberg movies and horror movies. And it sort of splits from here. I think that's like sort of the importance of this movie is like whatever Poltergeist had, we want. I think that it is sloppy, but I think that it is so much more than the sum of its parts. Mike, where are you at with the movie right now?
Endlessly entertaining. It's how much I loved it as a kid. I was like, I don't know how I'll feel about it now. And just every time it's goofy and sloppy, it makes me interested in it. The performances are far better than I thought they were going to be. It was deeper than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, I dug the shit out of it.
Aiden, we'll go to you. After listening to this entire conversation by people who are basically like teacher age for you, do you like the movie more or less?
I liked it more. It gave me the good parts of Ghostbusters like type of vibe. You know what I mean? Like I liked the movie a lot.
And Greg, what do you think?
I think it's a deserved classic. I think that it's so charming that in a way its weaknesses could be read as strengths. Like I think that there's a lot of sort of like looseness and potential sloppiness that actually helps the movie to like sort of, I don't know, get its hooks in you because it doesn't explain itself. It's not clear what's going on. So there's room for you to kind of like have your own theory. And in that way you become attached to it. I was at first thinking it was not very scary. Ultimately it by Greg standards, it's pretty scary. But it never lost sight of its first job, which was to be entertaining. And it seemed to take that very seriously. And I just felt like my time was very much cared for in this movie. Like they always wanted to show me something cool. They wanted to show me something big. They wanted there to be a joke. Like very little is wasted in this. And I appreciate that because some movies just will bore your freaking pants off.
And the cool thing about being 40 years out and not having to worry about the whole Hooper versus Spielberg thing is that we don't have to worry about the Hooper versus Spielberg thing. We can just look at it and say like, does this gel as a movie? And I think that in a lot of ways it's like AI, where like, what if Kubrick alone did it or what if Spielberg alone did it? But I think that it's kind of perfect the way that it is. And I do think that Poltergeist they both sort of needed each other to give us this classic.
Yeah, if it was one or the other, it probably would not be remembered as fondly. It would just be more flat and boring. And I can't think of anything more boring than arguing who directed it.
Right. All right, let's get to the point. Aiden just gave Greg an extra point, so that didn't declare anything. Mike, you have 31 points.
Woo! Spicy, dude. That's nice.
And we should say that I have 46 points, but I am going to recuse myself from all of this. Mike, you have 31 points. Greg, you have 36 points. Aiden is a Greg head.
Boom, boom. Aiden and a bettin'. Boom, boom.
All I heard were
boom.
good points. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, thank you.
Ouch.
Well, you know, like
Mike had good points, just 5 less than Greg.
Yeah. Hey man,
First I should
there's
learn to
nothing wrong
talk
with
more.
losing to Greg. A lot of the fans of the show have been clamoring for it.
Yeah, I'm
Losing
sure
to
they'll
somebody
still
who
figure out a
covers
way
their
to be
eyes.
mad at me about this.
Why did Mike have those 31? Those should have all gone to Greg. First of all, Aiden, thank you so much for being on here tonight.
Yeah,
of course,
thanks, man.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
Is
you
this
for
your first
inviting me.
podcast?
It is actually.
What do you think? Is it fun?
A
No.
lot of old people, but you know.
A lot of old people. That's going to be the case for every podcast you listen to. And then, of course, thank you to you guys. Guys, we have so many incredible shows ahead of us.
Yes.
Movies that may be better than Poltergeist. Are we feeling Poltergeist is a winner
Oh, I
of
don't think
Idiot
it's got.
Awards?
I don't think it's got any chance. We had our fun with it, but I don't think it's got much of a chance.
It's
Mike, what do you
very
think?
82. It's very 82. I could see
I-
time and alcohol changing ideas, and
I sort of think that too. I think that I'm stronger than Greg, let's say, on its chances. But we've got a Star Trek movie coming up, a John Carpenter
yeah.
movie coming up, a Tootsie movie coming up, directed by Tootsie, starring Tootsie. So we have a lot of things to go. But until then, for Greg, for Mike, for Aiden, keep watching those movies.
Boo yeah.
So, while Americans overwhelmingly support the right of an individual to make their own decisions about abortion, unfortunately, that right is no longer protected anywhere in the U.S. The Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade on June 24th. Abortion is a basic healthcare need for millions of people who can become pregnant. Restricting access to comprehensive reproductive care, including abortion, threatens the health and independence of all Americans. Even if you live in a state where abortion rights are upheld, access to safe medical procedures shouldn't be determined by location, and it shouldn't be the privilege of a small few. And we're already seeing certain medical practices be restricted even in those states. You can help by donating to local abortion funds. To find out where to donate for each state, visit donationsforabortion.com. That's the number 4, donationsforabortion.com. If you or someone you know needs help, or if you want to get more involved, here are 5 resources. 1. Shout Your Abortion is a campaign to normalize abortion. 2. Don't Ban Equality is a campaign for companies to take a stand against abortion restrictions. 3. Abortion.cafe has information about where to find clinics. 4. PlantCpills.org provides early at-home abortion pills that you can keep in your medicine cabinet. And 5. Choice.crd.co. That's choice.crd.co has a collection of these resources and more. You can also find all the links to these resources at podvoices.help and in the show notes. We encourage you to speak up, take care, and spread the word.